Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach.
Hi, you're welcome. I'm Rachel.
Ooh, we've got quite a crazy one this week. It's I've been pulling my hair out, going, this can't be true. There's so many WTF moments going, really? No way.
I like cases like that though. They like keep you on your toes, and you're just it's unexpected stuff just pops up, and you're just like, what? No way! I can't believe that.
Well, what happened to these people and all the? Well, I mean, obviously we'll get into it, but it's just like it was like a big snowball.
Yeah,
a snowball effect of just, whoop, what the fuck is going on here? I think y'all need to slow down. What?
Damn.
Yeah, crazy. Lots of pressure being put on people all around, on all sides, and it just snowballed from there.
Well, we shall find out. We'll delve into the case in a sec. But before we begin, just a small request from us.
If you enjoy listening to our true crime stories, please give us a like, a follow, and a 5-star rating. Those really, really help a whole lot for the algorithm and everything. Also, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British, and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
You can also join us in the public crypt chat, which is on our free Discord channel, where you can talk about cases, share theories, and read the latest news from our archive.
So your support helps the archive grow and ensures no story is ever forgotten. Also, this episode contains discussion of sexual violence, extreme physical violence, and murder. Some material may be distressing. Listener discretion is advised.
Now let's get to the story.
Well, before we get to the story, I did look up how to pronounce some things, like in some places they say Butetown or they say Butetown. So we're just going to say Butetown because that's what it told me to say.
Yeah, we're heading to Wales.
Yep.
This week.
It's on Cardiff. Yep. So by 1988, Butetown sits at the edge of Cardiff's docks, a place half forgotten where the ships have gone and the streets are now learning how to survive without them. On one of those streets is a rented flat. No heat, no light, the walls sweat when it rains. A young woman named Lynette White works nearby. She's 20 years old. Tonight, she walks between doorways and street lamps that flicker when the wind comes off the water. This story begins quietly with a rented room, the hours passing, and a city that looks the other way, even when it shouldn't.
Well, Butetown, often known as Tiger Bay, sits at the docks end of Cardiff. For generations, it has been shaped by maritime work and migration. Sailors arrive and leave. Families stay briefly or settle for good. The area becomes crowded, mixed, and closely watched. It is a neighbourhood frequently discussed from the outside, often reduced to reputation, and rarely described on its own terms by the people who live and work there.
By the early 1980s, the docks no longer function as they once did. Shipping declines, jobs disappear, and buildings fall empty as the city's focus shifts elsewhere. The local economy does not collapse outright, but it fragments. Work becomes casual, informal, or hidden. Prostitution remains one of the few constant features, settling into established streets around the former docks and continuing along the area's wider economic decline.
Well, Lynette Deborah White was born on the 5th of July of 1967. She was 20 years old in 1988 and worked as a prostitute in Butetown. That work shapes where she goes at night, who she encounters, and the risks she faces. By the late 1980s, it follows familiar patterns. Women move between doorways, pubs, known corners near the old dock roads. Men enter the area briefly, then leave again. Transactions are short and often hurried. Streets that carry ordinary traffic by day become quieter and more exposed after dark, offering few witnesses and little intervention when something goes wrong.
One address sits at the center of Lynette's working life, Flat 1, 7 James Street. The flat is rented by Leanne Vilday, a close friend who also works as a prostitute. Official records are clear about its purpose. It is not a home. No one lives there. It exists solely for taking clients. There is no heating, no working light. There is only one set of keys, and Lynette has had them for some time. The room is bare and functional, a place where people arrive, do their business, pay, and leave. It offers no comfort and little separation between privacy and risk.
So kind of like a brothel then?
Yep.
Damn.
Yep, it's just used. That's the only reason they rent it out, is to do that.
I mean, no heating, no lighting. Crikey. You know, so that's just mad. Just makes you feel like some derelict building. Do you know what I mean? That you just drop by every now and then.
Yeah, it's not very hospitable, but it does the job for what they need it to be
for what they're
used
looking
for.
Yeah. Well, in the early hours of Wednesday, the 10th of February of 1988, Lynette does not return home. Her boyfriend, Stephen Miller, who police described as acting as her pimp, goes looking for her at the address where Leanne Vilday is staying. He is angry that she cannot be found. In the days that follow, Lynette remains out of sight, moving beyond the routines that usually made her visible to the people around her.
I'm not sure that you can really classify being a boyfriend and a pimp at the same time in a relationship.
I mean, it happens. I just think, what takes priority? Are you her boss or are you her, I suppose it depends on the situation they're in, but.
That's just it's weird and gross. Ugh. Well, in mid-February in Cardiff, it's damp rather than dramatic. Cold settles into the brickwork and clothing and lingers indoors. On James Street, the flat exists as it always does, and it's used without comment. It is relied upon because it is familiar, not because it's safe. Saturday slides towards Sunday, doors open and close, cars idle at corners, voices echo through the stairwells. The docks are quiet, in the way abandoned work is quiet, carrying sound instead of activity.
In the early hours of Sunday morning, Lynette White is inside flat 1 at 7 James Street. The door is shut. From the street below, there is nothing to distinguish the flat from any other. No sign of activity, no indication of what is unfolding inside. But whatever happens that night happens behind a closed door, in a room designed for discretion.
Police will later conclude that Lynette was killed in the early hours of Sunday. Beyond that, the precise sequence is hard to reconstruct. There are no confirmed witnesses inside the flat, and no one can say with certainty what was said or done before the violence began.
What can be described comes from the injuries themselves. A knife is used. Lynette is stabbed and slashed repeatedly, suffering multiple serious wounds. Most are directed at her upper body, with others to her face and wrists. Her hands are cut as well, as she raises her arms in front of her, injuries consistent with attempts to defend herself. The pattern suggests repeated blows, not a single fatal strike.
The most severe injury is to her neck. At least 2 deep incisions cut into the front of the throat, severing the carotid artery, the jugular veins, and the larynx. The damage would have caused rapid unconsciousness and death, even on its own, and the pathologist considers it likely to have been inflicted at an early stage. Many of the other wounds are addressed as being inflicted as Lynette was dying or after death itself, perimortem or postmortem.
When the assault ends, Lynette is left on the floor beside the bed. Outside, night gives way to the morning, and Sunday continues in Butetown. People pass the building unaware of what lies behind the locked door. By Sunday evening, concern reaches a breaking point. Leanne Vilday goes to the flat with a friend, Eddie Dimmond. The door is locked, and there is no response from inside. Unable to enter, and unsettled by Lynette's continued absence, Vilday goes to the police station. She reports Lynette missing and tells officers she has not seen her for several days.
Just after 9 p.m. on Sunday the 14th of February of 88, Police force entry into the flat. Lynette is found on the floor next to the bed. The scene shows extensive injury and heavy blood staining around her and across the room. So no obvious sign that the door has been forced by the offender, and the murder weapon is not recovered. Lynette is left where she lies as the flat is secured.
Well, from the outset, the inquiry runs into practical limits. In 1988, DNA analysis is still in its infancy, and there is no national DNA database. Fingerprint examination remains the primary scientific tool. Investigators recover a large number of fingerprints and palm prints from inside the flat. The mattress shows little blood. The scene confirms extreme violence, but offers no immediate direction towards a suspect.
So the postmortem is the first moment the violence can be described clearly. Lynette has suffered at least 50 serious stab and slash injuries, most of them driven into her chest. Because of the nature of the injuries and the exact moment of death cannot be fixed, it is placed broadly in the early hours of Sunday, a window that guides the inquiry but remains imprecise.
Yeah, I think that, you probably, with that amount of stab wounds, you're not going to be able to really pinpoint which was the first one, to be fair.
No.
As there were so many.
Just a frenzy. It's just absolutely horrific. And she's trying to get him to stop and putting her hands. It's just.
Yeah.
Good God.
Well, early assumptions take hold. Lynette is a sex worker. Flat 1 is used solely for prostitution and only one set of keys, held by Lynette for some time before her death. Because she is killed in the room where she takes clients, police assume that she has been murdered by a lone customer. That's a view later echoed in offender profiling commentary associated with Professor David Cantor. But client describes a category, not a person, and many of those men are anonymous and untraceable.
Yep, it's hard to find guys that,
Yeah, they're not going to sign a book to say, "Oh, hey, I've been at this place."
You're not paying with a credit card.
Yeah. Not in '88. Did they even have credit cards back then?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Oh yeah, credit cards been around a long time.
But I have to delve back into history a bit more and just find out all these little things pointless things that maybe just,
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, you've got this big pool of people that just come in and out and pay cash.
Yeah, so random.
And they don't want to be seen, and they no names.
Exactly. And you can imagine that there's going to be hardly any witnesses because they're going to be trying to hide themselves as they're going in as well, because they're, it's like a secretive type of situation. So, yeah, they're definitely not going to have a targeted suspect.
Yeah. Well, police map out that world. Hundreds of local clients are identified as best as they can, along with other men known for violence, sexual offending, or robbing sex workers. House-to-house inquiries reach into the thousands. Witness statements climb into the thousands as well. More than 30 suspects are actively considered and eliminated. The scale of the work is immense, but it does not produce a single individual the evidence can hold.
Well, one reported sighting consumes the disproportionate attention. A 16-year-old girl says that she saw, quote, strange white man outside 7 James Street on Sunday afternoon at about 3:05 p.m, apparently with blood on his right hand. A photo fit is prepared and widely circulated. Substantial effort is devoted to identifying him. He is never found, though. There's no clear evidence that she fabricated the sighting, but the timing creates problems. The sighting occurs many hours after the most likely window of death.
It's like, did he kill her and then just sit in there?
Could have done.
It's
possible,
for like 12 hours or whatever.
Know. Maybe he took a nap. I sleep for 12 hours sometimes. It's possible, but, highly unlikely. But like I say, could be possible.
Yeah, I mean, some killers like Acamarelli, he ate lunch.
Yeah,
while the victim is there dead on the ground, he's just hanging out on the sofa, and it is possible.
It does happen. Yeah, it does happen. So, at this point, I wouldn't rule anything out. To be fair, let's go delve in even further. Let's go.
Other timing indicators exist, but none are definitive. Lynette's wristwatch has stopped at around 1:45 a.m., and a jeweler suggests it may have stopped due to shock or impact. Screams from a woman are reported in the area at around 2 a.m. Each detail points toward the early hours, but none can fix it with certainty.
Well, weeks later, the first major forensic development arrives. On or about the 4th of March, forensic scientists report traces of foreign blood on Lynette's jeans and socks, and on a skirting board and on a wall inside the room. In a knife attack, an offender may injure himself, and by early March, investigators are dealing with blood that does not belong to Lynette White. So it's a case of, whose blood is this? We need to look into this.
Yeah, he probably, as he's stabbing, his hand slid down the knife and cut himself. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, when we're watching true crime stories and we see that with the forensics that, when they do have a weapon and they check the handle, there's usually, they could take the handle apart and there's blood kind of inside the cracks of where, you've held it. So,
yeah. Well, that foreign blood type is AB, a rare blood group. Soon after, scientists identified the presence of a Y chromosome in blood recovered from Lynette's genes, indicating a male donor. For the first time, the inquiry has evidence that it can exclude people. Investigators believe men without AB blood can be eliminated, and a case that has been sprawling begins, briefly, to narrow.
That's interesting. That's going to help them a lot, with a rare blood type.
Mm.
Well, at the same time, police are trying to understand Lynette's last days. She had been away from home for several days. On Wednesday, the 10th of February, her boyfriend, Stephen Miller, turns up angry, demanding to know where she is. Lynette's earnings have been funding Miller's drug habit. Figures suggested around £60 to £100 per day. Investigators consider whether Lynette had been frightened of facing him if she had not earned enough.
Oh, well, that tells you.
That would tell you why he was a pimp,
yeah.
To feed his habit, obviously. I think, this was 1988. We've seen cases, within the prostitution in America, over here.
That's
their
pretty
boyfriends.
much what it's for.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So, unfortunately, it still happens.
Yeah. Well, another strand runs alongside of it. On the 12th of February, the trial of Francine Cordell begins at Cardiff Crown Court, arising from an alleged knife attack on Tina Garton. Lynette is a prosecution witness, and she fails to attend court, and a warrant is issued for her arrest. Investigators consider whether she had deliberately gone to ground to avoid giving evidence, and whether anyone connected to the trial, Cordell or her family, might have wanted her silenced.
Well, in that atmosphere, the AB blood lead becomes the organising feature of the case. One suspect comes to dominate the inquiry, later referred to as Mr. X. He admits previous sexual contact with Lynette, but cannot account for his movements during the critical hours. And his blood group matches the foreign blood found at the scene. And by autumn of 1988, resources and attention had narrowed around him. Surveillance is authorised. Other lines lose urgency, and there is a growing belief within the inquiry that the forensic trail is finally pointing towards resolution.
Yeah, finally getting through that breakthrough, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. They have a viable suspect, let's say.
Yeah, they have a viable suspect, and they're like, oh, here we go. But that belief collapses in November of 1988, when further forensic work excludes Mr. X as the source of the foreign blood. With his elimination, the investigation loses its prime suspect. The AB blood evidence has led nowhere. The photo fit has produced nothing, and thousands of inquiries have generated volume rather than answers. By late 1988, the case is stalled. No suspect, no forensic direction, and mounting pressure to move the investigation forward.
Well, attention turns back to what police can still work with: statements, re-interviews, and people in Lynette's immediate orbit. Stephen Miller remains central by proximity and perceived motive, being her partner. His home and car are examined, and although his blood group does not match the AB evidence, ruling him out on that scientific point, he does not disappear from the inquiry, though. Exclusion on one strand does not prevent investigators from continuing to view him through the lenses of control, money, and fear.
As forensic momentum ebbs, the investigation leans increasingly on people who can be questioned again and again. Attention settles on a small, accessible circle rather than on evidence that leads outward. 4 individuals, Leanne Vilday, Angela Sala, Mark Gromek, and Paul Atkins, come to matter most. They live close to James Street, move within the same social world, and remain consistently available to police. Their proximity and accessibility place them at the center of an inquiry that is no longer being shaped by scientific progress.
Well, Leanne Vilday, then 19, had rented the flat 1 since 1987, but was staying nearby at St Clair Court with her close friend Sala, who was 23. She was also a sex worker, and she's later described in court and assessments as having a very low IQ. Gromek lived directly above the murder scene in flat 2 and was socially connected through the North Star Club, which stayed open late and drew people from the same circle. Atkins had previously lived in flat 1 and had an extensive criminal record. He was described as intellectually limited and highly suggestible. These characteristics would later prove central to the group's vulnerability. They would become known collectively as, quote, the Core Four.
Alongside them, a second group begins to assume importance as well: Pamela Matthews and Violet Perriam. Unlike the Core Four, they are not embedded in Lynette's immediate living arrangements, but their statements will soon give the investigation something it has been lacking: accounts that appear to offer timing, structure, and narrative direction. In a case searching for traction, that matters.
In the weeks after Lynette's body is found, statements are taken from the Core Four. None of them implicate anyone. Over the first 6 months, Vilday alone provides 16 statements and does not claim to have witnessed the murder or to know who did it. The baseline is important, because what follows is not gradual evolution of memory, but a sharp change in direction.
This is where it gets messy. You have people who are on the fringes of society. They are vulnerable, not just socially, but economically, but also mentally vulnerable as well. That is not to disparage them in any way, but it's hard for me to go with police, the way they handle things, and you have to kind of be sensitive to it and sensitive to the people, and you put too much pressure on them, it's just not going to go the way you think it is.
Yeah, it very seems quite susceptible. People like that are quite susceptible to be led in certain directions, and which is a shame. Obviously, we do understand a bit of that with.
Well, look at Making a Murderer. Brendan Dassey. We'll bring that up again.
Yeah.
Old boy got railroaded like a motherfucker.
Yep.
And just because he didn't have the mental capacity and everything, and
easily coerced, and all that. So into agreeing to do things or say things, and
Yep. Well, there are early signs that the witness environment is unstable. In April and May of 1988, 2 women connected to the Dowlais, I'm not sure, the Dowlais Public House, Jane Sandrone, also known as Jane Ormond, and Noreen Emile. They give accounts that are confusing and inconsistent. One suggests that Yusuf Abdullahi confessed to Lynette's murder. The other lady, she said that he confessed to stabbing someone else. these are fragments rather than disclosures, but they introduce names into the investigation already under strain.
More people to look at.
Yeah. Whether the shit was true or not, they're like, well,
but
there's some names.
They can't rule it out. They've still got to investigate them, haven't they? So, whenever there's it could be completely
off the wall.
Yeah, completely not connected in any way. Even, somebody that never knew her or was near her. But if someone chucks in a name, it has to be investigated. So on the 17th of May, another incident did the same. Vilday, drunk in the North Star Club, is overheard telling Maxine Campbell that Pineapple and Dulla murdered Lynette and that she witnessed it. Pineapple is Stephen Miller's nickname. Abdullahi.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Abdullahi. Yeah.
Well, he's often called Dulla. So when challenged later, Vilday accepts that she did say the words but insists they were false, blaming being drunk, amphetamine use and anger toward Miller. Whatever the truth, the effect is lasting. Once names are spoken, they're difficult to remove.
Yep. Grab some more names, add them to the list, bring them in.
Yep.
Well, in June of 1988, the investigation takes an unusual and controversial step. On the 15th of June, Vilday is questioned under hypnosis by Dr. Una McGuire. The conclusion is blunt. Vilday has witnessed nothing and cannot help. The episode underlies how stuck the inquiry was and raises concerns about the reliability of anything Vilday might later say.
Questioned under hypnosis, I mean...
Oh, that was a big thing back then.
Crikey.
Repressed memories and all that fucking horse shit. Yeah.
Did they not have truth serum back then?
Well, you had to call the CIA for that.
Jesus. You have to be really susceptible to hypnosis, though, don't you?
Well, yeah, but there was this big thing about a lot of it came out with these people they're uncovering all these repressed memories because they were abused when they were kids, and so then they were accusing their parents of sexual abuse and that, and it never fucking happened, and it was just really, really bad. There is some things that you can.
Oh
get from
I
hypnosis,
don't disbelieve the power of some hypnosis.
But yeah, it was just really bad with a lot of those. So,
well, the other members of the Core 4 present different problems. Gromek said that he was at home and asleep from midnight to 10 a.m., though evidence suggests he may have lied about aspects of that night. Atkins proves wildly unreliable. In an interview on the 10th of April, he gives 4 mutually contradictory accounts, ranging from a story involving Vilday at the scene and a mysterious, quote, Barry of Bristol, to blaming Gromek, to claiming he then himself was the murderer. His credibility is already deeply compromised.
Yeah, this is where I would just be like, everything he says is suspect. You can't take anything on value unless you can corroborate it in some way.
And have some sort of
you have to be able to say,
okay,
you're the murderer? Okay, well, tell us how it happened.
Yeah.
Oh, you think the guy upstairs did it? Do you have evidence of that? You have to be able to corroborate it.
Yeah,
you can't just say,
the murderer's
he said you did it.
Yeah.
And then arrest him.
The murderer's going to know what happened, and obviously what wounds were inflicted and where, etc.
Yeah.
So,
and how it all went down.
I think it could easily be disproved.
Yeah. Well, in autumn of 1988, 2 further witnesses began to drive events. That Pamela Matthews, who lives next door to Vilday and Sala at St. Clair Court, reports seeing Sala acting suspiciously in the early hours of Saturday, the 13th of February. She later adds an account that Sala disposing of items in a rubbish chute. Also, early Saturday, appearing scared and nervous. The timing is awkward. Saturday, not Sunday.
Well, on the 1st of November 1988, Matthews changes the date. The suspicious behaviour is now placed in the early hours of Sunday, the 14th of February, the night that Lynette is believed to have been killed. That shift has immediate impact because it aligns suspicion with the murder timeline and intensifies pressure on Sala and those around her.
That seems weird.
Yeah. I mean, if you was telling the truth and you knew exactly what date, you wouldn't say one date and then, come out with another date at a different time. Your truth is always your truth. So, I do believe you can't.
You also have these people who are also drug users.
Yeah,
and
low
stuff
IQ.
and they're just like, well, maybe it was Sunday.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I think they're a bit lost in confusion, to be fair. I think that's what it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty confused.
Well, yeah. 9 days later comes the statement police treat as a turning point. On the 10th of November of 1988, Violet Perriam says she drove along James Street at about 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, the 14th of February, and saw 4 men arguing heatedly outside number 7. She describes them using racially loaded language common at the time, indicating that they were black men. She says 2 had familiar faces and that she would recognize them again, though she did not know their names. She also states that Stephen Miller was not among them.
On the 16th of November, Perriam escalates her account. In a second statement, she positively identifies one of the men as Rashid Omar and another as, quote, almost certainly John Actie, again excluding Miller. Within days, police return to the core 4 and the nature of the evidence begins to change.
I think I can see a pattern here.
Yeah.
You say something, I go, well, that doesn't really line up. You come back a few days later and go, yeah, they're blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, that does kind of line up, but it's still not lining up quite correctly. A few days later, oh, now it's kind of lining up. This is where you just have to go, no, this is not right. You're just feeding off from what we're telling you or what you've heard or what you want or what you think that we want you to say, to solve the murder. That's just crazy.
It does sound like that. It does sound like that a lot. That's the way that they're coming back. They're just coming back and trying to fit a narrative. Yeah.
They're just trying to fit the window and fit the information that they have and the names that they have. Well, over the next 20 days, the Core 4 moved from saying they saw nothing to claiming they witnessed Lynette being murdered by 5 men. Accounts change, then change again. Contradictions are reduced or withdrawn. The statements converge into a single narrative that Stephen Miller, Yusuf Abdullahi, Anthony Paris, Ronald Actie, and John Actie were at or inside Flat 1 around the time of the killing, and that each played a role.
A new story. Well, the claim is striking because there is no evidence that these 5 men were acting as a group in any ordinary sense. There is no evidence that they were friends or regularly associated. Even the Actie cousins are not described as close. The only links are interpersonal. So Ronald Actie is in a relationship with Vilde, and Paris has a family connection to the father of Vilde's child.
Yeah. So they're just loosely kind of...
loosely connected. Yeah. Very loosely.
Yeah.
And if the cousins both Acties and don't even get along...
Or they just don't hang out.
Or not as close to where... they go and hang out together and they're with each other basis. Sort of, on a few days a week or whatever, so...
Yeah, you're like, well, this is kind of weird. This
just don't make sense either.
Yeah. Well, in the first week of December, momentum turns into arrests. On the 7th and the 9th of December of 1988, Miller, Abdullahi, Paris, Ronald Actie, and John Actie are taken into custody. While they are interviewed, further statements are taken from Vilde, Sala, and Perriam. The accounts become more complete and more closely aligned.
Well, by the end of that process, Vilde and Sala placed themselves inside the room during the killing. They claim that they were coerced into cutting Lynette's wrists, forced to implicate themselves and ensure their silence, and then threatened with death if they went to the police. For the first time, the investigation has eyewitness testimony, placing named suspects inside the room.
Also, I would say I give something to the police here a little bit. Say they're under pressure as well.
Mm.
They are trying to figure out who killed her. Great. But they are also, trying to get the truth. And, people are going to lie in the beginning. No, we didn't see shit, man. What are you talking about? And then the truth slowly finally comes out. But it's how you get to that truth. It's like, how are these people saying these things? How many times have you interviewed them, and they just said the wrong shit or whatever, and then finally their shit's aligning, and they're all really close and they're all talking to each other.
Yeah. I mean, we see it over, I sit there and watch the American crime shows, and you're always like, oh, he ain't got a lawyer. Why is he not lawyered up?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't, So they,
But if they're just questioning you, you don't, they're like, well,
No,
what do you,
yeah, but
do you know
obviously
anything that happened?
they're vulnerable, and the police can tell that these are vulnerable, people. There should be some sort of representative there.
Yeah. Well, what it still lacks is a confession.
Mm.
Pressure concentrates on Stephen Miller. He is Lynette's boyfriend and pimp, like we said, and investigators believe he has a motive. He is also vulnerable. Later assessments will place his IQ at around 75. His mental age is roughly about 11, and his reading age is about 8.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, quite severely, they call it nowadays like developmental delay.
Yeah, something like, vulnerable guy.
Yeah. Well, at that, we're obviously a grown man at the age of an 11-year-old, definitely very vulnerable and...
And he's fallen into drug use and that, making it further a problem,
Yeah, bless him. Well, Miller is interviewed 19 times over 4 days for around 13 hours in total. A long time.
That's brutal.
He's denied access to a solicitor, which, like I said before, is wrong. They should always have a representative.
That's the first whoopsie.
Yeah. So he was... like I said, denied access to a solicitor during the first 2 interviews. He denies involvement repeatedly, more than 300 times.
Yeah.
He denied.
Didn't do it.
But the interviews are confrontational and coercive. Officers tell him his alibi is destroyed, insist witnesses place him at the scene, and make clear that they are seeking a version they consider, quote, right. Officers tell him that they will continue questioning him until they get it right. So that's so wrong.
That's not, I don't think that's how it's supposed to work.
Back in the 80s, I can imagine, yes, there was probably a lot of this type of police investigating, and
but at the
putting
time,
pressure on people.
I do remember, if I do remember correctly, at this time, this is when PACE came out, which is trying to give protections to witnesses. And, they're just like, we're just going to keep going over this until we hear the words out of your mouth.
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? It's like the amount of pressure, if you put, their mindset was probably, we need to pressure this guy into telling the truth. And I think a lot of the time, if people are put under that extreme pressure, they do break and they tell the truth.
Yeah.
But he clearly, even with that pressure, he was clearly still denying, So,
well I did watch a thing. There was a guy. They were criticizing because he did get a solicitor and didn't challenge these things. Didn't go, hey, yo, you can't do that.
Jesus,
you can't say that. That's not how it's supposed to work. Just let down.
Madness. I think everybody should study law a little bit, and so they can represent themselves.
and this is where when I say, shut up, get
Don't
a
say
lawyer
a word until you got a lawyer,
and then he gets a lawyer that just lets him down.
Yeah, such a shame. Right, well, let's carry on with this story and see what happens.
Well, eventually Miller concedes uncertainty. He says it could have happened, that he might have been there and not remembered being because of drugs. Once that door opens, officers press for details. Who entered the room? Who stabbed Lynette? What happened? In the end, Miller gives what police need. He says he was present, says he stabbed Lynette, and implicates the other men, especially Anthony Paris. and to a lesser extent, Abdullahi.
Yep. So they pressured him into...
They pressured a vulnerable guy into, confessing.
Well, it is not a confession containing new facts independently verified. No murder weapon is produced and no hidden detail is revealed. Miller's accounts fits the theory that was already constructed around him and the others.
Yeah, where's the murder weapon?
Exactly.
It's like, hey, where did you guys take the knife?
It's just taking his word and the stories from who they've been interviewing, where it's like so many different stories. I mean, even I would be bloody confused.
Yeah,
like,
unreliable, and these are all from unreliable people.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest problem. It's like, how do you verify this?
Yeah, and like I said, with the drugs and stuff, that does diminish, their thoughts, their thought patterns, and remembering things, and
and they preyed upon that.
Yeah,
by the looks of it.
By the sounds of it, that does seem that way.
Well, at the time, the witness narrative is fixed in place. Vilde and Sala maintain the 5-man story, insisting each of the accused stabbed Lynette and that they were forced to cut her wrists. Yet there is still no forensic evidence linking any of the 5 men to the crime scene. None have AB blood. Neither Lynette's blood nor the foreign blood is found on their clothes or property. No fingerprints placed him inside flat 1, and the knife is never recovered.
Yeah, so to me, if I was investigating this case, with that lack of evidence...
Where's the knife?
And that none of them have the AB blood, and that was fresh blood on, Yep. So... It just points to that they were not there.
Yeah. Do any of them have cuts or have fresh scarring from a cut or anything?
Well, despite this, the investigation moves forward on the basis that a prosecutable case exists. On the 11th of December 1988, Miller, Abdullahi, Paris, Ronald Actie and John Actie are charged with Lynette White's murder and remanded in custody. From this point on, they are known as the Cardiff 5. Preparation for trial begins. Under the committal process, the prosecution calls Vilde, Sala and Atkins. One defendant calls Gromek on a limited issue. And by February of 1989, all 5 men are committed to stand trial at Swansea Crown Court. Every member of the core 4 has become a prosecution witness.
Mm-hmm. They got what they needed.
Yep.
Cracks are visible early. In 1989, Nicola Haysham receives a letter from her friend, Leanne Vilde. Vilde claims the police gave her 2 choices: support their case and implicate the Cardiff 5, or be charged with murder. In the letter, she writes that continuing to tell the truth would have left her in the dock for murder. She says she lied because she was scared to death. She later admits writing the letter, but denies its contents.
In September of 1989, another reinforcement arrives. Ian Massey, a convicted armed robber, serving a long sentence, provides a statement claiming Anthony Paris confessed to him in HMP Cardiff that Paris and the other 4 defendants murdered Lynette, and that Vilde and Sala were forced to cut Lynette's body. Massey becomes a prosecution witness.
And I'm going to say allegedly, but I've watched something else and they talk about Massey and they call him a supergrass. So take that as what you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my advice, don't go, if you go to jail, don't be trying to be a cool kid and, like when you go to school, cool kids saying about all this, that.
But there are jailhouse snitches.
Yeah.
That's just what they do because they're trying to get time off their sentence.
Yeah, that
all that
probably
stuff.
Privileges of some sort.
Yeah. Well, the trial begins in October of 1989. The prosecution case rests on 3 pillars: the core 4's testimony, Miller's taped confession, and a small group of witnesses claiming admissions outside police interviews. What it does not rest on is science. None of the defendants have the AB blood. There's no fingerprint blood or fiber evidence linking them to the flat. The prosecution argues that despite the Y chromosome finding, the foreign blood could be Angela Sala's, a contested interpretation intended to neutralize the most problematic forensic fact.
Well, before the first trial can conclude, the judge, Mr. Justice McNeill, dies on the 26th of February of 1990, just before summing up. God rest your soul, bless you. You know, the jury is discharged and the case must be tried again. A draft of the summing up he did intend to deliver reveals his view of the evidence. Quote, "There is a suggestion that the evidence against each of the 5 defendants have been made up. There is not a shred of evidence that it happened." Unquote.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
When the trial judge is like,
That's
you
a
ain't got
shame.
shit.
You know, he was obviously they were through the trial, getting through the trial, and bless him, the poor judge died. But
that's pretty damning.
when
the trial judge
again with the new case, haven't
and
you?
the trial judge is like, you ain't got shit, man. Like, what are you doing?
I wonder if let's find out in this second trial to see whether they take that into account, what the first judge's summing up was. Let's have a look.
I don't think so, but they haven't really taken a whole lot into account. The second trial begins in May of 1990. The prosecution abandons Atkins after his poor showing in the first trial. At the request of defense counsel, the judge calls him anyway, but his evidence is so weak, the jury is directed to disregard it. The judge also tells the jury that Vilde and Sala are discredited witnesses, having lied and contradicted themselves repeatedly.
See, the police should have known that they would be more than likely be like that. If they've given contradicted stories and stuff right in the beginning of their investigation, you know, do they not really think that their stories might change and flutter in a courtroom?
So now they've lost their witnesses.
Yeah.
So now what?
God. Well, even so, on the 22nd of November of 1990, Miller, Abdullahi and Paris are convicted of murder. Ronald Actie and John Actie are acquitted, though. The Cardiff 5 become the Cardiff 3. Those convictions are returned without forensic support, without identification of the male AB blood donor, and without any physical link between the convicted men and the murder scene. The case now moves towards appeal and toward a reckoning with what the investigation became once it stopped searching outward and began building inward.
And they lost their witnesses.
Yep.
Crazy. Still got convicted. Well, after those convictions, Miller, Abdullahi, and Paris remained in custody while their appeals are prepared. The focus of the work is narrow and technical rather than emotional or narrative. Their lawyers concentrate on the interview's evidence itself, right? How the statements were obtained, how long questionings lasted, the conditions under which interviews were conducted, and whether confessions extracted in that environment can safely support convictions of murder.
Yeah, definitely needed looking at.
Yeah. The work is slow and largely invisible, carried out through transcripts, audio recordings, and legal argument rather than public hearings.
The appeal is heard by the Court of Appeal in December of 1992. The judges listened to the interview tapes in full and examined transcripts line by line. They consider hours of questioning spread across consecutive days, noting how accounts shift between sessions, how details emerge only after prolonged pressure, and how certainty appears to harden over time rather than from independent recollection. The question before the court is not who killed Lynette White, but whether the convictions reached in 1990 can be allowed to stand in law.
Guess. The court's answer is no. It concludes that the interview process was oppressive within the meaning of Section 76, 2 in quotations, of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, and that the confessions obtained under those conditions are unreliable. The judges note that those confessions form the backbone of the prosecution's case, and that without them, the remaining evidence cannot sustain the verdicts. Although Miller's confession was, in law, evidence only against him, the court indicates it could not realistically have failed to prejudice. The language of the judgment is unusually severe, describing conduct that left the court, quote, horrified, and warning that such interrogation techniques were wholly contrary to both the spirit and the letter of the law. The convictions of Miller, Abdullahi, and Paris are quashed. No retrial is ordered. The men are released, having spent close to 3 years in custody, including lengthy periods on remand while maintaining their innocence.
Yeah, see, I'm not a judge or a lawyer or whatever, but I definitely, it's an unsafe conviction, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
No
doubt.
From the investigations, it's definitely 100% not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
With the convictions overturned, the murder of Lynette White returns to an unsolved state. There's no immediate reinvestigation, though, and there's no new suspects. For years, the case exists largely as stored exhibits, archived interview tapes, and paper files held by the police. Witness memories fade, lives move on, and the flat on James Street passes back into ordinary use. The case remains officially open, but without momentum, direction, or a clear investigative strategy capable of moving it forward. Stays as a bit of a cold case.
Yeah. Well, by the late 1990s and early 2000s, that begins to change. Advances in DNA analysis allow retained biological material from the original investigation to be re-examined. Semen recovered during Lynette's postmortem is reanalyzed alongside other biological traces preserved from the crime scene. From this work, scientists obtain a male DNA profile. It does not match any of the men previously convicted. The profile is entered into the national database, but initially it produces no match. But it's still early, so...
I love the fact that they've sort of moved on with the DNA to do the familial DNA. Yeah. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
That's where we're heading.
Yeah.
Because, among the retained exhibits is a cigarette wrapper carrying another trace of the same unknown male DNA.
Oh.
A contributor referred to for years simply as, quote, cellophane man.
Oh. Well, investigators then turned to familial DNA searching. Instead of looking for an exact match, they search for close genetic relationships that might indicate a family connection, which I think is a fantastic tool.
We've had a couple of cases already that we've done that. That's where they've got them.
I've seen so many cold cases from 50, 60 years ago, and they're starting to go through these cold cases and using the familial DNA, and
it's amazing.
And they're coming out with results, which is fantastic. But for the first time since 1988, the direction of the inquiry in this case is not set by witness statements or confessions, but by laboratory results. That process leads police to Jeffrey Gaffour.
Gaffour.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for helping me. So leading police to Jeffrey, a man with a history of using prostitutes in Butetown area and prior contact with the James Street flat, who had not been identified during the original investigation. So this is brilliant news.
It sounds like the weird white man that was seen earlier by that 16-year-old girl.
Yeah. Who knows?
Crazy.
Was it him?
In 2003, Gaffour is traced and arrested. DNA evidence links him conclusively to the crime scene. Before any formal interview, he makes unsolicited admissions, first to police while being taken to hospital following an overdose, and later to medical staff, stating that he killed Lynette and had been waiting for this moment for years. When formally interviewed, he maintains that he acted alone. He did not challenge the forensic evidence and offers no alternative account.
Wow.
He pleads guilty to the murder. There's no trial and no competing narrative placed before a jury. On the 4th of July 2003, Gaffour is sentenced to life imprisonment at Cardiff Crown Court. In legal terms, responsibility for Lynette White's murder is finally established, resting on evidence that did not exist at the time of the original investigation. The truth arrives late, not through confession alone, but through science.
Wow, that's amazing that they finally found him and he's not disputed anything. When they say, "Oh, I've been waiting for this day for years" or whatever, why don't you just hand yourself in? You know what I mean?
Well,
Save yourself some kind of looking over your shoulder and all of that. You know?
yeah, he's been looking over his shoulder for many years, and by the look, because he had an overdose, and he's probably sick with it, and just finally it's over.
Well, for Miller, Abdullahi, and Paris, Jeffrey Gafur's guilty plea changes nothing in law. Their convictions had already been ruled unsafe by the Court of Appeal, and that judgment stands regardless of what came later. Gafur's admission confirms what the court had already concluded, but it arrives after the men had spent years in prison for a murder they didn't commit. What follows does not revisit the killing itself, but documents the damage caused by the investigation and the prosecutions built upon it.
Oh yeah, this story ain't over. Civil claims follow. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I would as well.
So the Cardiff Three, they bring actions against the Chief Constable of South Wales Police, alleging malicious prosecution and misfeasance in public office. None of the claims reach trial. Instead, they are solved through settlement, with substantial compensation paid and formal letters of apology issued. These settlements provide financial redress without a public determination of liability, closing the case while leaving unresolved questions about institutional accountability.
Well, attention then turns to the witnesses whose evidence helped secure the original convictions. All four members of the group, later known as the, quote, Core Four, are charged with perjury in 2007. In December of 2008, though, the three, Salah and Vilday and Gromek, plead guilty and are each sentenced to 18 months in prison. The fourth, Paul Atkins, is ruled unfit to plead after medical evidence shows that he lacks the capacity to understand the proceedings and the case against him is discontinued.
But back then he had the capacity to go as a witness, and crazy.
Well, I think back in the 2000s, they got decent slizzers.
But also, a better understanding, better protections. Yeah. But they had assessed him before as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, at sentencing, the judge accepts, on a factual basis agreed by the prosecution, that the convicted witnesses had been subjected to sustained pressure by police during the 1988 investigation, and that this pressure shaped their accounts that they came to repeat. The court recognized that the coercive environment in which the evidence emerged. Even so, the judge rules that perjury strikes at the heart of the justice system.
In 2009, scrutiny turns to the conduct of the investigation itself. Prosecutors announced that there is sufficient evidence to charge 13 serving or retired South Wales police officers with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. 2 civilians, including a long-term police informant, are also charged. And for the first time, the investigation, rather than its outcome, becomes the subject of criminal proceedings.
The resulting case, R.V. Mouncher and others, begins at Swansea Crown Court in July of 2011 and is described as one of the largest police corruption trials in British history. From the outset, concerns are raised about disclosure. As the trial progresses, those concerns deepen. By late November, court-ordered material cannot be produced. Some documents are believed to have been destroyed. Others cannot be located. Confidence in the disclosure process collapses.
Well, on the 1st of December of 2011, prosecutors conclude that those failures make a fair trial impossible. No further evidence is offered. The judge directs the jury to return not guilty verdicts on all counts. The trial ends without any judicial determination of the allegations against the officers. the opportunity for a court to rule on the conduct of the investigation is lost.
Well, this is weird, but weeks later, material previously said to be missing was found intact in the senior investigating officer's office.
What?
The discovery raises serious questions about how the prosecution came to collapse. But by then, the damage was done. The verdicts are final, and the case cannot be reopened. Once again, accountability slips out of reach.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave that for the audience to judge for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a fucking thing.
Well, public reaction is severe. The case is described as one of the gravest failures in modern British legal history, cited as an example of how difficult it can be to hold police officers criminally accountable when alleged misconduct is systemic rather than individual.
The police, they investigate themselves and they found nothing wrong. Oh, shocking.
And this is the thing, and I think at the moment, they still do to an extent, but I think there is also another body now that does investigate the police. Is it the IOPC or something?
The Independent
Police Commission or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good.
it's always shady when you hear the words, "We've done an internal investigation."
It's like, okay. You need an independent outside investigation. You can't investigate yourselves. That's just...
It's like
you're going to mould the outcome to being in your favour, clearly.
Yeah. I go out and commit a crime. Don't worry, boys. I'm going to investigate this myself.
Yeah. And then you investigate. Oh, I found myself not guilty.
Yep. Man, that was a close one.
Thank God we've got independent bodies investigating them now. So,
but even then, it still doesn't shake out always in the way it should, really. Yeah. Well, in 2015, the Home Secretary announces an independent review into the collapse of the corruption trial, rejecting calls for a full public inquiry. In parallel, several former officers bring civil claims arguing that the prosecutions against them were unlawful. In 2016, the High Court dismisses those claims, ruling that the police had been entitled to investigate and had reasonable grounds to bring charges even though the prosecutions ultimately failed.
Well, published in 2017, the review finds no evidence of coordinated conspiracy or bad faith, but identifies profound systemic failure. An investigation that narrowed too early relied upon unreliable evidence and operated without effective leadership or oversight. Reforms are recommended. No disciplinary actions follow. The report becomes the final official account.
Lynette White's family remains largely out of public view. Jeffrey Gaffour's conviction brings legal certainty, but it cannot recover the years lost to error, delay, and injustice. The case is now recorded as solved. What remains is not doubt or guilt, but the cost of time. Time taken, time lost, and time that can never be returned.
Well, that was the story of the murder of Lynette White. And that was crazy. I mean, the case has started in 1988 and finally finishes with a final report in 2017, whereas the report's published.
Almost 30 years later. Yeah. Crazy.
A long time.
How much it impacted and how many people it impacted over the years, especially those guys that sat in jail and rotted for years. Well, almost 3 years around. Come on.
And when you know that you're innocent, that's the thing. If you're wrongly convicted, that must be even more hell being stuck in prison.
Yeah. I mean, I think about those guys.
Because you know within yourself whether you've done anything or not. And you're trying so hard to sort of say, like the guy, he, thousands of times sat there saying, I didn't do it.
Over 300 times. Yeah. I didn't do it. Oh man, we're going to put the pictures up in that of the guys that the acties when they got acquitted. Man, there were so many people around them, and they came out cheering and they're like, "We're innocent." Those guys they didn't just say about themselves, just because they got acquitted, but they were even saying those guys that just got convicted, they're innocent too.
Yeah.
You know, they were fighting for them as well. And that's just amazing.
It's hard. I think, I mean, luckily nowadays, people are not really convicted unless they are solid evidence,
I mean, there's going to be some case, but I think
of course there will, but
the guys back in the day that got, hemmed up just like this.
Yeah.
And it took 20, 30, 40 years before DNA cleared them.
Yeah.
And then they finally got released.
See, and that's what I think about. I think now, this is why I do enjoy the cold cases I watch, because they're now starting to reopen all of them now that they can do they have been since they could do the familial DNA stuff. So, they've not forgotten these cases.
Yeah.
And they've not wanted to go back and revisit them and use the tools that they've got now. I mean, who knows where forensics and stuff will be in, another 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I definitely think we'll get to the point where you will not be able to get away with murder.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
or crimes.
I've said before about like serial killers, why they were really big.
Yeah.
And, like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And the DNA comes along. Because they didn't
have the tools, the forensic tools and check it, DNA. Yes, they could tell you what blood group you were, but other than that, they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So it was a case of relying on witnesses. And if there was no witnesses, what can they do?
Yeah. I mean, look at
can you solve crimes?
Look at the Joseph Kappen case that we, they just got stuck.
Yeah.
And it took familial DNA to be able to solve it.
Which I think is brilliant. I actually, there a lot of work goes into it. I think people don't realise how much work goes into it.
Well, this has been quite a roller coaster. We thank you so...
Quite confusing at times, definitely.
Thank you so very much for listening. I know it was a big episode. But if you'd like to support the work we do here in the archive, please take a moment to follow the show and leave us a 5-star rating. It helps the others discover the stories we tell and keeps the archive growing. Sharing the podcast with someone who loves true crime also makes a huge difference.
Most definitely. And definitely, we keep cases in people's forefront of victims and on all sides, victims of miscarriages of justice and victims of the murders. But you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British as well, and on Facebook at MMB Podcast. And if you'd like to chat with us and other listeners, come to the Public Trip and join our free Discord space with case discussions, theories, and updates from our archive.
Everything you need, socials, Discord, and more, is in our link tree below.
So until next week, guys, stay safe, stay curious.
Bye-bye.